What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel, and today we are doing episode 2, which is going to be the break-in and pre-flight checklist. When you first buy a bike, any bike I would say, you want to make sure you check quite a few things. I'm going to be going over those things with you, along with the riding impressions of this bike for the first 600 miles, because it's 621 for that first service interval, how I would set up the bike for the very first ride, and the kind of initial pros and cons I'm getting from the Ducati V4. So let's get into it. First, let's start with the things that I would check first thing right before I even got on the bike to ride it, okay? So I'm gonna check the length of the levers here, which can be changed or altered from this portion right here. You can turn it left or right, it'll bring it out or in. Now I have massive hands, so I wanna make sure I bring that lever out as much as possible, and I single finger the brake. That's exactly where I like it. Now also on the clutch side here, we want to adjust the lever for the clutch. I two finger this as well, which means I never get this lever all the way to the bar because my other two fingers are kind of in the way and kind of compresses between those when I pull this in. So I want to make sure I adjust the lever properly. There's an adjustment right here, stock on this bike. So you can adjust the lever further out. So for me, I have big hands again. Further out's better because now I can pull on that clutch, and as long as you can get in and out of neutral with the bike warm, I would say that's a good adjustment right there as far as the lever length goes for you. Now, if you're pulling the lever in and you're not getting into neutral, it's very hard to get into neutral, make sure you adjust that properly. And of course, it should be, if you pull all the way to the bar here, it should be super easy to get into neutral. If not, take it back to your dealer for an adjustment because they should be adjusting this with the PPI, the pre-purchase inspection. But if you can do it yourself right here on the lever, all the better. Another thing here is a tank pad. Now I know this isn't exactly the most refined and elegant way to cover the tank up at the moment, but they didn't have a tank pad for this bike, and I have it on order, so it should be getting here mid-January, I believe, which is a couple weeks. The painter's tape here comes off easily. There's gonna be no sustained, like, sticky stuff that's gonna stay on the tank here, and it just stops the tank from getting scratched. Now, the paint here, you can even see, I can see right here on the camera, I don't know if you can see it there at home, but there are micro scratches all over this thing already, and I've barely even touched this bike. Micro scratches all over this little thing. So the Ducati red, while it being a gorgeous color, does show scratches a lot. So I would protect it if this is your baby. If it's just a track thing that you're throwing around, of course, you probably don't care that much. But if it's your baby, you keep it in the garage, you want it looking its best, I'd probably look at getting maybe PPFing everything you're gonna be touching. You know, that's a paint protection film you'll probably put around here, around where your legs go, around here at the top, around where you lean. I'm just gonna put a tank pad here and put some ceramic coating on it. That should clean everything up. That brings us to the shifter here on the left side. Now, the shifter Ducati has changed for 2025. It is extremely easy to go from standard shifting, which would be the hole up here, to reverse GP shifting, which is down here. Now, I've already done the GP shifting. I have these big clown shoes. I have a size 13. So for me, the benefit of this is coming out of a turn or leaning into a turn, and you wanna get that your foot under your shifter, if it's standard shifting, to shift up while you're coming out of a turn. Now you don't have to do that. Your foot can be on top of the lever now, so you're not scraping on the ground. When you have these big clown shoes like I do, they stick out to here, they scrape the ground. It's not a lot of fun. So being on top of the lever is much better. Even drag racers, for example, they'll say the top's better because with your legs back behind the bike on that initial jump or launch, it's kind of hard to get your leg up in first gear to the top of first gear and then slide it under here and then get it prepared to go. It's much easier to just get it to the top of the lever and push down. Now to change this out on here, you can't go from the back. You can see there's absolutely no space to fit an Allen back there. So the easiest way to do this thing is to pull out these. These are both a 5mm, or I'm sorry, these are both a 6mm Allen right here. And this whole rear set will come off, or you're able to manipulate it in a way where you can actually pull this off from behind, and then you can change directions from here to here. Now you don't need to change the length of the bar. I went from standard to GP myself. I did not change the length of this bar, which you can see is adjustable. Right there's a screw on top of it right up there. I don't know if you can see it. Let me try to focus on it. There's a screw on top there. You can adjust the length of this. Don't adjust it. Just go straight to GP shifting. Don't bother adjusting the length. It should be perfectly fine. Also, another mod you're gonna wanna do first thing is get spools. These spools right here are from Pitbull. They're nice and silver. They kind of match the tricolor color, and they also match right here on the adjustment section of the rear axle. So why would you need a rear stand? First, it makes it really easy to put air on the tires. It also keeps the wheel off the ground. Now, these are Super Corsa tires. I love Super Corsas. They're a little bit softer. And because of that softness, a lot of Ducati owners, they let their bike sit. If you let your bike sit for too long, it will flat spot the tire. If it flat spots the tire, it just feels like the whole bike's vibrating violently. And I'd also probably get a stand for the front of the bike as well. Another advantage here is the chain. Now, for adjusting the chain here, you want to make sure this is off the ground. I mean, you don't have to, but it's kind of a lot easier to do and easier to adjust the rear wheel with it on a stand. Also for oil changes, there's a litany of things you can use a rear stand for. I highly recommend it. Now on the Panigale V4 here, we have the oil fill here, and you always want to check your oil level before you go for a ride, but we don't see an oil level here. The oil level is actually on the other side of the bike. And there is a little window built into the fairing right there, and we get to see the oil level right there. As long as you're in the center of the window there, you're fine. Also, these first initial miles, you want to make sure you check your fork and you see if we have any leaks in the fork. These actually look okay. Now, initially you will have kind of a little leak right there as everything's settling in, but that actually should go away, and I'm not seeing anything excessive. This looks fine. As soon as I clean the bike up, it'll probably be 100%. I also don't care if you have a lead acid battery, if you have a lithium battery, you should always have a tender. Now, Moto 4s put this inside under the cover here. That doesn't really make it accessible for me. I don't want to have to pull out 2 screws in this top every single time I want to put the bike on the tender. So I removed the 2 screws here, removed this whole top, and I ran the wiring through everything that's OEM here, and it sits right here with everything else, and you can see I have it plugged in right now, and it's charging currently. It's always a good idea to have a battery charger, especially if you let your bike sit for maybe a week or 2 weeks. If it's not a daily ridden bike, you should have it on a tender. It keeps the battery lasting longer, and of course keeps everything charged. You also want to familiarize yourself with the electronics of the motorcycle, get to kind of know the layout of everything here. So if I go into settings, something interesting I'm noticing here with the 25 versus like, let's say the 18 to 24. If I go into settings here and I go into vehicle, we've got a nice new menu here for the mechanical info I didn't see on the other models. And this kind of tells us our throttle position, our TPS, horizontal and vertical, our brake pressures, our exact temperature of the radiator fluid, which is something that's new. Usually we have this stupid bars thing down here, and that's all you can tell for temperature. We actually have a temperature reading here now. You can see I do have a low gas warning right now, but that's all we get. We don't get the gas gauge, and I don't know why they didn't throw it on here. It would have been maybe 2 seconds of engineering to throw it maybe right next to that gauge right there, and just kind of put anything for the fuel on there other than just a low fuel warning. Now if we go back here, we go back to service and info. This kind of tells us when our service is. It's a bunch of cool stuff on this combi. I will be 100% honest. I mean, you can even go to tire calibration if you want. You can start the calibration if you put different tire sizes on here, which is very important. We can even go to track settings right here. And the track, we can go to tire pressure, and we can set our own tire pressures if we really want to. And of course, you have your mode settings here, and we can go from sport to road setup, sport to road, wet. I mean, there's a whole, but we can go to race in here, and race, the gauge totally changes up. So let's see if we can go into here real quick, race A. There we go. Cluster completely changes, kind of that more reminiscent Panigale look to it with a lap timer. And the G meter, I mean, you can change all these cool views. This is all very easy to handle and manage, like super easy stuff right here. Now, if I go home here on the left side, we can actually use this for the views, and we can change the views into power and torque, the G meter, the throttle and braking with lean angle percentage. I mean, this is a really cool menu. They've really done a lot with this. This is probably my favorite combi to date now. The headlights on this model I think are great. A lot of people are saying they like the old ones better, but you can see right here, we've got an inlet. Boom, that's our inlet right there. Now these DRLs are set to automatic, or you can manually turn them on and off, but I have them set to automatic, so when it gets dark, they automatically turn on. The headlights will actually turn on. And of course you have your switch here for the bright lights, which makes them super bright. See? Insane bright. Another thing to do before you take your first ride is check your tire pressures. They're going to do that at the dealership, but a lot of people use different tire pressures depending on their own body weight. Me, for example, I'll probably do a 32 in the front, 28 in the rear setup, and that's more for spirited riding rather than drag racing or anything like that. If you're just a normal person doing normal stuff, just go 35, 35. As long as the bike feels balanced between the front and the rear, meaning it doesn't feel like the front is dragging. Sometimes you almost feel like a weight is anchoring you in the front, or something's wrong with the front. That's likely a deflated tire, or the tire's not inflated enough. So just check that before every single ride. It's not really hard to get a tire pressure gauge, put it on there. For example, here, this Ryobi's like $100. It's battery, you can put a battery in it. This thing lasts a long time, a lot of charging. I've even used it in my truck, used it on cars, everything. You can set up the tire pressure here. You just go to right here to start. It's going to read the pressure, and you can actually set up for how much. You just press start, and as soon as it reaches that pressure, it shuts off. I say it's an awesome part for the garage or even for the track. What's up, guys? I'm here with the 25 Ducati Panigale V4. This is our shop bike, so we own this bike. We actually bought it for R&D purposes, and we're doing an entire build series on the bike. meaning we're going to change out rear sets, we're going to change out aesthetics, we're going to change out performance stuff, and I'm going to give you guys a review on every single part as we install it. Now, as for today, what we're doing here is we're doing a first ride. Now, I'm going to do the break-in procedure that Ducati recommends, which is going to be the first 1,000 kilometers of the bike. I have to make sure to keep this bike under 7,000 RPM. Now, it'll allow me to go over 7,000 RPM, unlike the BMW. BMW will hit you at 9,000 RPM and you cannot exceed it. It's like a rev limiter right there at 9,000. This will allow you to exceed it, but they recommend you don't until that first service is completed. They're doing something new on the first services on these things. They're doing the first 6 months or the 1,000 kilometers. So that's the first service interval. So this will be my first real startup here because I'm actually going to ride it today. I've had this for a couple days and haven't had a chance to ride it yet, just been working. I love this new 16:9 aspect ratio TFT. I put it in race mode. I've at least changed the settings. I haven't fired it up yet, but here we go. Oh! It's got a very loud cold start through this and this luggage on the bottom of the bike here. It sounds like a pissed off generator starting up, so I'm not too amazed by this. The high idle probably has something to do with the Euro 5 Plus new regulations they have in Europe. We got the standard V4, which means we have the red fender, which if you get the V4S, it's a matte black fender, which I don't like either of them. So we got a carbon fender coming here. We got the red wings, which are integrated into the fairing. These wings, of course, give you downforce through turns and, of course, through acceleration as well. We also have carbon components for this we're going to install. Between the V4 and the V4S, we've got cast wheels instead of the aluminum wheels, the aluminum forged wheels that come on the V4S. Now, we also have wheels coming for the bike as well. We're going to swap out. We also have a lithium-ion battery. This is a standard battery, lead acid, so it's a little more weight. We got a lithium-ion as well. The one thing really we're missing from the V4S is going to be that suspension, which we got the Showa suspension here, and a very basic steer damper here that is not adjustable, so I might have to go get an adjustable one for sure, because I love the adjustable steering dampers. Maybe an Öhlins to replace that. This also comes with a 520 chain straight from the factory, and check this out. No gratuitous amount of slime on the chain. That's amazing. Usually they throw a whole bunch of lube on this chain and it flings everywhere. This is just a little bit of wax. Love that they did that on this, and it's a 520 chain with a DID sprocket, and this actually is a, what is this, 41 tooth sprocket here. I'm assuming it's a 16 on the front. They put a lot of stuff into this. I mean, we got a new revised swing arm. People are very polarized on getting rid of the single-sided swing arm. It's kind of the Ducati theme. The chain adjusters look amazing. We've also got the underslung brake caliper. I'm just gonna sit here and wait for her to warm up. As soon as she gets going, we're gonna pull her out of the driveway and you'll get my first impressions, true first impressions with the bike. I think we're warmed up enough now, and the kickstand even, so much better. It used to be a little knob you get on the V4, kind of like right around here. That was super annoying. But this new kickstand actually is easier to kick down. Thank you, Ducati. We've got the mode in sport right now. Let's go ahead and change this to what I like here. I want to make sure I get full power out of the bike right now. So go into race A. All right, good clutch engagement. All right, and we're off. So I have this in race right now, so I expect the throttle response to be very notchy. And it is. So I'll be showing you guys here exactly how to brake in the bike, or at least how I brake in the bikes. Now it says do not exceed that 7,000 marker, but you can see how low it is in the RPM range. So you never want to stay a static RPM like on the freeway like right now. So I'll be downshifting, upshifting. I'll be doing everything except staying at 1 RPM. And you want to vary throttle loads. So I'm going to stay in the slow lane here and do some throttle roll-ons, just kind of get the power into it. I'm only going like 25% right now. And I'll go like 50%. And you never stay at the same RPM. That's very good response. Of course, I'm in race mode right here. I will put it into sport mode after I get out of the first 20 miles here. I just want to make sure I have full power for the first 20 miles, because that's the most important break-in part of the motor right there. Maybe the first 20 or 100 is what people consider it. So I'm varying RPMs, be downshifting here. Never exceeding 7,000, and I'm letting an engine brake. I'm not braking the bike, I'm letting an engine brake on the way down. This TFT has so many views and options, it's crazy. I'm going to spend some time looking through this combi and trying to figure it out. They went with a 16.9 aspect ratio on the bike. And the reason they did that was so we can store more information on the screen, of course, side to side, but we can also get more or less height from the combi, so when you're full tuck and your helmet's down in the cockpit,
You're not seeing screen, you're seeing the road. That's how they've engineered this thing. So I'm gonna work my way up to about 100% throttle, and then I'll do 100% throttle at 7,000 RPM and back down. Ooh, I can feel some power. Just giving 80% turn, feels like a V4. With the new model here, we're making more power later in the RPM range than the previous model. I'm guessing they're trying to kind of mimic that V4R with a V4. And I can also see the RPM limiter here. Before it was like 14,000 with the V4, or 14.5. And now we're pushing out to a 16 redline or 15 right here maybe. So that'd be interesting to see as well. When I finally get this thing on the dyno, we'll do some testing. Alright, I'm getting off the freeway now. I didn't want to bore you guys too much with the throttle on, throttle off stuff on the freeway. But I can tell you it's a very interesting feeling when you keep doing this for miles and miles and you actually feel the bike getting faster because it's braking in. Again, downshifting with the hand again. Try and brake in the clutch a little bit. The best way to brake in the clutch is downshifting. So it's pretty basic stuff, guys. You want to avoid any kind of free revving or no load pulls. Meaning like on a stand or something like that, or if you're just sitting here in the middle of the road just rev bombing it, that's not what you want to do in braking. I mean, you never want to rev bomb the bike in the first place in my opinion, but you definitely don't want to do it during your braking period. Clutch is feeling more sorted, that's good. We're going to vary the throttle, RPM, and then let it engine brake. So it's just a bunch of this for like, I would do this for the first like 100 miles and then you should be okay after that, honestly. It says for the first 621 miles you should follow this procedure, but no one's gonna ride 600 miles varying throttles on the freeway. It's a little annoying to ride like that, but I definitely would do it probably the first 100 miles and probably downshift the clutch for the first 100 or 200 miles. And that's a proper break-in. Now the service intervals after this first service are a little nuts to me. They're saying 7,500 miles or yearly. Now for me that's kind of crazy work. If I'm just riding the bike normally, I would say every 3,000 miles or 6 months, whatever comes first. If you're doing track duty, man, I'd be swapping oil out every single track day. Like every single track day, new oil, because every time you get oil to a certain temp, the problem is it breaks down and you lose half your oil life every time it reaches a certain temperature. And when you're at the track, you breach that quite often. So the oil is spent by the time you're done with a track day. So it doesn't matter if you have 20 miles on the oil, and if it was a track day or 50 miles, whatever it may be, swap it out. It's never going to hurt your bike to swap it out too much. It is going to hurt your bike to swap it out too little. I'll even tell you guys a story. We had an influencer that sold us an engine for a bike from a BMW, and he does a lot of canyon work, and I mean a lot of canyon work. Really beats the bike up. Guy knows how to ride. Keeps the bike between 10 to 15,000 RPM on a constant basis. Every weekend went to the regular service intervals, and when we pulled the motor apart to kind of refresh it and make sure everything was good, it had a lot of signs of wear from infrequent oil changes, and he did the oil changes based on what BMW recommended, but because of the track duty and how hot the oil was getting, it needed to be changed more frequently. So keep that in mind, especially on a bike like this, that it's a high performance machine. If you guys are beating this thing up on a weekly, daily, whatever basis, just make sure you change the oil a lot more frequently. I also like these grips here. They actually went for a pro grip. Now the 2018 Panigale didn't have a grip like this. It had a very like smooth grip. These definitely are going to be more wear, meaning probably about every 1,000 or 1,500 miles I'm going to have to swap these things out, but they feel so much better. And I have grips already at home for this bike, so what I'll do is I'll show you guys how to swap out grips too, which there's a couple little tricks to it. I'll show you guys. Makes it really easy to swap out grips. Alright, so let's go over the basics of trying to break in your bike. I'm going to stick to the factory 1,000 kilometers or 621 miles to breach that 7,000 marker as they stipulate to, and that's to keep warranty. And I should be setting an example for everyone here. So you should be doing that simply for the fact that these bikes store black box data. They'll be able to tell when you breach that RPM and what day, time, and what odometer reading you did that at. So make sure you adhere to what they did if you want to keep your warranty. I'd also recommend you vary RPMs and throttle loads for the first 50 miles to 100 miles at the very least. meaning you do not stay at a static RPM whatsoever. I would also make sure you do some heat cycling on the bike. I mean, the bike warms up, you do your ride, your bike's done, then you let it cool down, and then you do that process all over again. Heat cycling also helps brake in as well. I'd also do the first 200 miles, braking in the clutch, meaning downshifts. Only use the clutch, and then taking off, of course, you're using the clutch anyway. So that helps brake the clutch in as well. And as far as what throttle to use, I vary from anywhere from 10% all the way to 100%, and then let the bike engine brake on the way down. That's the best practice in my opinion. There's no universally accepted method, but you can't go wrong using that one, let's put it that way. And I would say it's definitely more important to vary RPMs and throttle loads in the first 200 miles than the last 200 miles, for sure. So it's very important when you do that first ride, first 20 miles the most vital, then it's going to be the first 100 miles the second vital, and then it goes from there and very less and less important in my opinion.
All right, ridden this thing for about 400 miles now, and I'm gonna go over kind of the pros and cons I feel with the motorcycle right now. Now, I haven't taken this bike above that 7,000 RPM marker. I'm gonna stay true to what Ducati asked for as far as the break-in period goes. I'm not gonna breach it, but here we go with what the best I can do right now at 7,000 RPM and me riding this thing for this long so I can give you a good synopsis. I mean, we're talking, this is like at least 4 or 5 hours of riding. First thing, these mirrors, while they are designed well, and I like the fact that they go directly into the fairing stay now, you can see the 2 bolts here, and then this will come out. These shake like you wouldn't even imagine on the road, and I couldn't imagine putting a lot of weight on this. You can see that. If you put weight on this thing, it's gonna break off just like the 18 through 24s did. But I do like the new positioning of where they put it in the fairing stay instead of on top of the fairing there. Cleans up the whole front end. Now let's go to the exhaust here. And just for preface, I am part of BT Moto, that's our channel. And for those of you guys that don't know, we create tuning for motorcycles like this. We make fast bikes even faster. We do that with our 50 state legal tuning. And on this bike, we've been working with the exhaust valve open, and forced closed, or stock versus forced open, let's just say. Or here's the difference what that sounds like just free revving it. Now you hear the exhaust when it's open, it definitely sounds louder, and it is better, but it has a very muddy kind of like overlapping tone. I don't like it so much. Yes, I prefer over the stock sound, but I would definitely rather get a modified slip-on for this bike than to just open up the exhaust valve. That and the exhaust valve squeaks when the bike is warm. At least this bike squeaks when the exhaust valve is warm. I mean, weird, right? It's like a $30,000 bike and it's squeaking already with, 400 miles on it. And while we're talking about the exhaust here, I've got 400 miles on here, and you can see I'm scratching the hell out of this cover right there. Like, I can't wipe that off. That's all scratches, and that's for my heel right there. Now, I'm riding on the ball of my foot. If you're a track guy or something like that, you're riding on the ball of your feet and you're transitioning your foot here and there. It's gonna rub on this if you have a decent sized shoe. So as far as this is concerned, it's just a piece of plastic. I mean, it's not like the end of the world here, but for your Ducati guys, you'll probably maybe want to put a piece of PPF here, or a high temp PPF right here. Something that's gonna cover this up where your heel's not rubbing it. I do plan on changing this part out for the tricolor carbon matte piece, and I'll try and protect that, and I'll let you guys know how that works out. Now let's talk about this seat right here. Now this seat is a stock V4, and it's definitely in competition for the most uncomfortable seat I've ever sat on for an extended period of time. After riding this thing for an hour, my ass hurts like no other pause, but I think it's because how stiff the seat is, not the actual shape of the seat, but just how stiff it is. But then again, it's Ducati. I mean, you're really gonna sit in this thing for 2 hours straight. I do because I wanna put some miles in this thing, but more than likely you're just doing 20-minute sessions. You're hanging off the side of the seat, you're doing all that stuff. It's made for racing Ducatis, it's not really made for comfort so much. And that brings us to the ergonomics of the cockpit here, which as a 6'3" person, I can definitely tell you, versus the Triple R, which is another 2025 model I just did a review on. Check it out there at the top right. But the ergonomics of the Triple R felt very cramped in the cockpit, whereas this bike, it does feel like I'm in a racing position, but I can still see the combi clearly. I'm not getting cut off by the windscreen here. I can see a full view of the combi. I have a good position with my arms on the clip-ons. My butt is in a good position. My legs are in good position. It feels like it's made for someone my height. I'm not kind of inconveniencing myself to ride this bike like I did on that Honda Triple R. Ducati has also fixed the kickstand, which is a big complaint for me on the 18 through 24, where we just had this little knob sticking out here that you had to find first before you kicked it down, because you couldn't do it at the edge here. You had to do it right here. It was some weird knob that came out here, and you would probably kick your fender at the same time you drop the stand, which is always annoying. This one, kicked straight down, easiest thing to do. As far as riding the bike goes, it feels just as comfortable as the 18 through 24 does. As far as the engine feels, it feels just about on par too. Now, I will say the engine does feel neutered for sure. First gear, second gear, and it is also neutered in the RPM, especially when you're just in neutral. Now, I believe the neutral limiter is specific only to the break-in. Once I have that break-in done, I think I'll be able to free rev higher than 4,000 RPM, but this is what it looks like. You can see in neutral, I cannot breach 4,000. I think that's an amazing thing Ducati's doing. I think a lot of manufacturers should really follow suit with that, especially BMW, where you see these people just rev bombing these things till the exhaust is just glowing, and they're brand new bikes. That destroys your motor. That is not something you should be doing with a brand new engine that's not broken in properly yet. I believe that rev limiter is going to be gone as soon as we do the break-in. I'll let you guys know. But if I do put this thing in first gear and just pull the clutch in, I'm able to free rev it, just so you guys know. And let's talk about another great Ducati quality, the heat it produces. So you get free leg warmers on the left side here, and we're talking anything above 60 degrees. It's gonna get real hot around your calf and ankle area. I probably recommend definitely some riding boots. If you're riding this thing in 90 to 100 degrees or something like that, you are burning your legs 100%. Make sure you have some protection on the left side. Right side seems okay because of this giant heat shield we got here. Not so bad, but that left side is pretty bad. And under the seat, where we felt in that $11.99 and $12.99, a lot of heat, this model doesn't suffer that issue. I'm not feeling any heat from under the seat whatsoever. Maybe there would be if I got that wheelbarrow Akrapovic exhaust that comes from underneath the tail here. But as far as stock, it feels great. And any of you that have had a Ducati Panigale in the past know about that throttle spacer issue. There is no issue anymore. They do not need a throttle spacer. They have gotten this proper. There's no more slop in that throttle. Love that. And I think that's going to do it for the break-in review here on the bike. Now, I'm excited. We're going to take this thing over to Moto Forza just next week. We're going to get a full break-in. I'll let you guys know what the service costs, the whole breakdown on the service, what they do over there. I'll do a whole video on that as well. And that's off to the dyno with this thing, and then we're throwing a whole bunch of parts of this thing. And I've got to pick up still even more parts than we even saw in that first video. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.